Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle book review of the X-Men Penguin Classics Marvel Collection. Not actually certain what they're actually called, but I assume it's the Penguin Classics Marvel Collection X-Men. This has got forwards by, and you can see the details there, all the names associated. Here's all the details on the back, and this includes a lovely selection of stories. I'm just going to show you. Of course, there's always going to be ones that you think, why didn't they include that? I would have loved to have included the Juggernaut story, but still, you get what you get. This, you can see, is the paperback version. Now, I'm just going to quickly show you. Now, I've got the hardback one of Spidey. So it's slightly bigger. Now, I'm not going to buy the hardback version of the X-Men as well. Now, it's 400 pages. Well, actually 384, I think. But there's a few blank pages as well. But you can see it is slightly bigger. And you've got this lovely golden, obviously on the paperback one, you don't have that. I assume, I don't know because I haven't seen a copy, that the X-Men one is much the same. But still, it is very nice quality, but in both cases. I just went for this one, slightly cheaper, and I thought, really, can I justify getting the hardback one? Perhaps I should have done, but still, I went for this, and I'm very happy with this. So let's go for the actual. It just smacks of quality in the paperback version, as well as, of course, the hardback one. I just think it's just glorious. Beautiful. You've got lots and lots of details there, all the various artists. You've got a little introduction as well. Now, there's a series introduction. Always slightly a bit, because it's the same. Now, personally, I think they should have done maybe about 2 pages for the series introduction, and then, of course, straight into actually some essays and all those things. It's merely minor complaint. So here's the stories. You can see there, X-Men 1, 3, 4, 5. There's a few missing, of course. You can see X-Men number 2 is not there. Not the world's greatest of stories, but you can see 8. And it doesn't include everything. Sometimes you'll notice it's got 9 to 13, the occasional confusions of the Marvel method. Doesn't actually have that as a comic. But it's also got like the middle years, 17 to 40. Doesn't, unfortunately, put little pictures of all the pages. That would have been brilliant, wouldn't it? But no. But also they've got the origin stories, as well as, of course, the later stories, which you can see on, obviously, the Sentinels, those ones. But before I go any further with this one, I'm just going to quickly show you, of course, the one I consider the ultimate version in terms of Marvel. But I think the Penguin ones are really sort of the way they should have gone with the omnibuses. But they didn't. You can see here the X-Men one, and of course you've got all the stories there. So obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through. I love these omnibus editions, not complaining at all. But paper quality, great. But I think the Penguin ones are actually superior in many ways. But I suspect we will never get to the same number of Penguin collections as the omnibus ones. Who knows? Maybe we will. If they're successful, maybe they will increase and add more and more of them. So let's just go to the volume introduction. I love that one. Fantastic Four had sold well. And we figured, why not do another group? And, well, obviously they did, thankfully. Because they did the Avengers, also the X-Men. They could have done lots of others. Of course, we had later the Defenders, the Invaders, and so on. Many other. There's lots of great. And the thing I like about this, and that's the thing that's not really, you don't really get in the omnibus, though you do get, of course, obviously Roy Thomas's thoughts about various things, which are always fascinating. But it is nice, the analysis of it. You may or may not agree with some of the comments made in this. There's a few things that I sort of thought, well, hang on, that's not strictly true, or didn't feel right to me. But anyway, depending on how you look at it, I guess. But it does go through a lot of details. Great insights, just fascinating. Also mentions lots of other books and things that I must admit. Hand of Fire, the comics art of Jack Kirby. I haven't got that, so but it's got lots of details. And let's just get to the actual stories themselves. Beautiful, really well printed, just absolutely look gorgeous. I always think that's just great. Now it's got the covers, you can see the covers there, and of course the story. At that point, that's all we get right at the start, isn't it? When you actually see the exclusive private school, New York, sort of sets the scene. You've got the guy sat, and then of course he calls out, and obviously at that point you've got no real idea of the powers of all the person. And obviously straight away you're into seeing the Beast. Of course, you don't really know particularly his powers, or even Cyclops. Cyclops is a bit of a nothing at this point. Obviously, Iceman and Angel, you can work it out very quickly. But straight away you're into showing the various abilities. And that was a great start sequence. Classic. They could have done that with the Fantastic Four. That would have been so much better, perhaps, instead of the weird origin story. I always thought it was just a strange one, that one. But I guess they learned sort of how to do it later on. That so they got a much better origin story, straight into the action. Then, of course, it's shown a lot of the action straight away. So you're not sort of like going, oh, you know, it's a sort of boring origin. This is a really impactful origin story. And, of course, straight away, one of the great villains, which, of course, would have been brilliant in Fantastic Four #1 if they'd started with Doctor Doom. That would have been amazing, wouldn't it? Would have brilliant. But they got Mole Man. Mole Man's great, but he's not Magneto. Magneto, I mean, look at the menace. And, of course, we find out more about Magneto later on, but I just love that story. I mean, it's pretty daft, especially the way that there's a lot of things set up. I don't think they really carried forward later on with the sort of the army, the relationship with the government and that sort of thing. A little bit maybe, but not so much. There's certain things suggested. But it's still great. And you've got then, now, it doesn't put an essay for all of them, but this one, it goes straight obviously into Beware of the Blob, one of my favourites. I loved the Blob story. Quite a sad story in many ways. It's quite an unusual ending, the way that, I don't want to spoil the story, 24 pages of thrills. And to me, it was always just a classic. It was one of the annuals, one of the UK annuals. And I just love that story, from just reading it there. I love that sort of thing where he sort of puts the ice cube on his foot and then he just breaks it apart. Just classic. And of course, the door's haunted. It's shut by itself. But it's good. But the thing was slightly is the ending's a bit of a... And they did that a couple of times at the start. And I thought, well, if that's the case, they could do that all the time. That's the trouble with the ending. It's all one of those ones you think, well, if it's all solved that way, you could, you know, what's the point of the rest of the story? But still. And then you've got the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Again, I never know if they're actually called themselves the Evil Mutants. I don't think they ever do. Maybe they call themselves the Brotherhood. But obviously, because they might consider the other lot are the Evil Mutants. That's the way it works, isn't it, with these things? But of course, we've got introduction, the brilliant Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And that story has been played out many, many times. The storyline obviously there when they're being hunted down. So it's a great little story. I love that bit with the army coming in. Everyone suddenly go, well, we're lost. As if that would happen. You're suddenly middle of the street, you're thinking, that's a bit strange. Didn't anyone mention that there was an army coming towards us? Probably not. Weirdly, they skipped the story to the next one. This one, they got X-Men #5. And this is sometimes one of these things you think, why did they include this story and not the other stories? But still, it's a good story, all the same. But it's, again, really sort of basically follows on with the fourth and the fifth story. It's not really adding anything to the story particularly. And it didn't really need it. Didn't really need to add that one. They could have added, to me, the Juggernaut story would have been with Kane Marco, would have been a much more obvious one to introduce. But still, I guess they want... But the thing is also that's nice about this, they also include these, which I think is just great. I just love it. The quality of the artwork is brilliant as well. I mean, it's really decent. I mean, it's great quality paper. Stories just look superb. Not glossy, it's not... Just right. Just brilliant. OK, it's not the same as the original comic books. But they're never going to do that. Still, then they're on to the next one, which is again an odd choice. X-Men #7. You got Return of the Blob. I mean, great story. Absolutely nothing. I mean, but it's just odd when there's you think so. If you're going to do a book with all the X-Men, you'd be picking stories that sort of like, you know, add to the story of the X-Men, but they're not. Sort of half did it, half didn't. But still, I guess it was still good. And you got here obviously the Blob and Quicksilver again, and maybe that was the reason with the Quicksilver with I don't know, not certain what the reason was, but again it's got the letters page. Then you got into X-Men again, another one that's perhaps not really necessary. A great story, Unis the Untouchable, really good yarn, and would have been nice if actually included the posters, Marvel Masterwork posters. They always often they've got a book of all the ones they're just great. But Unis the Untouchable, now they jump forward. So they got another essay. And this is what I would love to see in the omnibuses. It just gives a lot of you may again not agree with some of the comments, reasons, whatever. It's always obviously up to it's an interpretation of various things, but among us still. But I did have to laugh about the fact that, yes, the Sentinels are not exactly the world's greatest design. They look much better, I think, later on. But here, just a bit sort of standard sort of outstretched Jack Kirby pose there. Probably thought up in about 5 or 6 seconds, but still, I still enjoyed the Sentinels. They were a great little storyline. But still, in some ways, I would have liked the Magneto story. But again, why choose one, not the other one? The supreme sacrifice in which a life is lost, etc., etc. Okay, on to the next one. Now, they jump forward a bit. So we got those stories. And the Mimic story would have been nice as well. I quite like that. But there was a bit of a period where the stories went a bit funny. I think the X-Men ones. The middle period was never for my favourites. So you've got here, it's got details there. Obviously gives details like the Mimic, just a new threat. Also, like obviously the Super Adaptoid story, which I always loved. The Rogue, obviously, which later on is sort of very similar sort of thing. But also you've got these sort of stories. Though I always thought that was a missed opportunity, the super villains. I thought that was a great team. Could have been a great team. They were good. The Masters of Evil, I don't know, could think of some other title for them, but they could have gone for that sort of thing because you've got Plant Man. You could have introduced the Cobra. I don't know why I didn't put the Cobra, or Cobra, whatever you want to say it, into the story. Obviously got the Porcupine. I love the Porcupine. Great character. And Unicorn, not the world's greatest character. But there's other characters you think, why didn't they include Jack Frost? I always felt Jack Frost would have been good. You could have had, of course, story then between the X-Men's sort of Iceman and Jack Frost. I assume the other one would have won. But still, a man called X. This is a bit weird when they went with the origins. Now, I'm glad they included the origins in here. But weirdly, they never had the origin for Jean Grey, which is very strange. That never appeared, I don't think. I don't think there was ever a story with Jean Grey one. But I did really love these ones. But it was always an odd feature, sort of cutting the stories in half and then just sort of having these origin stories. Very strange. But they include them here, the origins of the Uncanny X-Men. So if you want those, which is great to have, but they have this story, which is, I think the only reason is because of the Professor X story. But this, if I should die, a bit of a clue on what's going to happen there. How many times did that happen throughout the career of the X-Men? But still, also you've got the change, obviously, of costume at that point. And, well, not the world's greatest story, sort of bizarro sort of character. I don't know, I think that maybe Solomon Grundy. That was always my interpretation of that. I just thought, no, it wasn't a character that particularly impressed me, even when he turned up later. But new directions, and you've got another great little essay as well, which is just great. This is the thing I really love about this. They've included those, and they're not the ones that you get in the old omnibus ones, where sort of I always feel they're like, obviously they're the Marvel Masterworks ones, and they're okay, but I prefer the ones in here, I must admit. But still, well, I say they're probably good as well. Shouldn't be like that, should I? This one, of course, the classic stories. I love these ones. And, of course, they had to include these ones. But, of course, they've been reprinted quite a bit. Recently, I think they've been reprinted in the gallery editions. Neil Adams ones are, of course, some of the best X-Men ones. As far as I'm concerned, love these stories. But they have been reprinted quite a lot over the years. But really great artwork. I love the panels. Love all just the stories are just great. Real brilliant. Mission Murder. In fact, sometimes when you actually look at them, you think, oh, I don't even remember that title. Just always loved the artwork. The artwork just so much so that you don't actually see that. Enter the Man Called Havoc. Obviously, Scott Summers, Alex Summers. But you got that story. It's just, great little story. And again, you got I love the fact they include the letters pages. Something that I think that should be included in the epics as well. But just superb artwork all the way through this. And then on to the final stories. But they don't include the last story, which they sort of like half mentioned, but it's still the end of the beginning. And you can see another letters page there. Of course, a bit of Barry Windsor-Smith there. For the Life of a Mutant. That's obviously going to be the next story there. But you got of course, the end panel. And they fought happily ever after, ? And they mentioned about the fact that they don't appear again. Really? Well, were all those stories in the various Hulk and Captain America and all the others, the Spider-Man stories, the Marvel team-ups and things, I think they did appear a few times after their appearance here, but it's just said the X-Men had not fallen, blah, blah, blah. Obviously the magazine stopped, but it just seemed that the series revived, etc., etc. Maybe I'm being unfair on that. Just the way I read that, I was sort of reading it as if they sort of never turn up again. Yes, but they do turn up, and that was the thing. Again, maybe that's just me interpreting it wrong. But it does include this, which I think is really, really nice, The Man in the Sky. And I just think it's great because this is obviously a pre-mutant story, pre-X-Men story, where you've got obviously someone looking very much like Peter Parker in many ways, called Steve Ditko, and some of the other characters as well, very much. Even I think that guy there is the guy that was involved with Spidey, with him getting his powers. Obviously, clearly turns up everywhere. But the thing is that's really annoying, slightly is odd, that they never continued the storyline of it. They mention the fact that there's some sort of group of people. We are the future. We are telepaths, the teleporters, the mind readers. We are the future. Why are you hidden? Why do you not reveal yourself? And of course, you've got this storyline. You think, why didn't they ever meet these people later on? You think they could have continued that story. But still, it does include some lovely suggestions for future reading and some other information as well, which is always great. And all the way through to some notes, which is always great as well. And perhaps, hopefully, maybe at some point, a longer list. So you've got a longer list maybe at some point, like the epic ones where you get longer. But you've also got some blank pages. I always love blank pages. Maybe you could put your own notes in there. Really useful. But still, this is an absolute superb book. I love this. Penguin Classics, I think they've really, again, done just the best as far as I'm concerned. I just love this collection. Maybe I'll regret that I didn't get it in hardback, but I'm still very happy. It's actually, I love Penguin books, just the black. Just somehow that's why, in many ways, as much as I love these, I think this is great. This always feels like a Penguin book. That one doesn't feel like a Penguin book. So in this way, you look at it and think, oh, that's a Penguin book. Just grown up with that sort of style of Penguin books. Of course, Penguin had many different styles over the years. So it's not all, but it's that feel of Penguin. And I love it. Absolutely brilliant. So X-Men, this is the Penguin Classics Marvel Collection. Just come out, 400 pages. Well, actually probably about 380 odd, if you include some of the blank pages, of course. Just brilliant. Really worth checking out. There's also, of course, the Avengers one. And I was just going to say I will show you that. But I've tucked it away. Oh, no, there it is. Just before I finish off the video. Here's the Avengers one. I will be doing a quick review of that. Some great stories in that. Don't think it's as good as the X-Men one. I think the X-Men one is the best out of the current three. But saying that, I haven't got Fantastic Four one. So maybe that's even better. I don't know. But I will, at some point, maybe get the Fantastic Four one as well. Bye.